Blackswan is the first anti-fragile cryptocurrency with the goal of allowing investors access to an uncorrelated hedge to cryptocurrency markets and volatility. SWAN will be available through an IDO announced in the next couple of weeks on our Telegram channel, which will be linked in the description down below. Today I'll be making a brief video on how Blackswan works to create a symbiotic relationship with all invested parties in the token and explain some of its unique features. If you would like to learn more, you can visit our website, blackswan.network, or ask us questions in our Telegram, where we will try to get back to you as quickly as possible. But without further ado, let's get right into the explanation. There are 4 key elements in the Blackswan ecosystem, and those elements are the investors, the Blackswan fund, the liquidity providers, and of course, the price action. And all 4 elements work together in order to propel Blackswan to new heights by creating an anti-fragile token that is the most valuable when the market is the most uncertain. And I'll go over in these slides how this works with how each of these 4 elements work together to benefit each other. So the investors benefit the Blackswan fund. The Blackswan fund benefits the liquidity providers. The liquidity providers benefits the price action, which of course I'll explain in a bit. And the price action obviously benefits the investors. And the liquidity providers benefit the investors as well, as there's more ample liquidity for the investors to trade or make speculation decisions, whatever they decide over time. So let's talk about the first connection, and that connection is the investors with the Blackswan fund. And the Blackswan fund is instrumental in how Blackswan operates in order to create this anti-fragile ecosystem. So with Blackswan, there is a constantly expanding supply, and this supply is distributed to 2 key members, and those are the liquidity providers, which the supply expansion is distributed through passive claimable rewards. So think of many other liquidity mining programs where you can stake your LP tokens and receive passive rewards over time, something in the range of like a 20% APY per year. And then there is the Blackswan fund, where the other tokens from the supply expansion get siphoned to. And in the Blackswan fund, with these Blackswan tokens that it has stored within it, it will slowly sell those tokens over time into USDC stablecoin in order to provide that stop loss or rainy day fund for the entire ecosystem overall. And I'll go more into this later in the video, but these are the 2 main places that the supply expansion goes to as the investors benefit the Blackswan fund. Next, the Blackswan fund benefits the liquidity providers. So with the SWAN liquidity, there are 2 states that the liquidity can be in. The first state is the liquidity can be high. So if the market is very liquid, then that means that the liquidity providers will receive those passive rewards, as I mentioned before, from the supply expansion. Or the SWAN liquidity can be low. And this is where it becomes interesting because it creates this anti-fragile system where if the SWAN liquidity is low, then LP tokens will be rewarded to the liquidity providers. So think about it this way. Currently, if you are staking your LP tokens in a program, you will most likely be receiving these passive rewards, as I mentioned before, with a majority of programs. However, how Blackswan works is when the liquidity is lower, you will receive more aggressive rewards. In other words, you will receive a much higher incentive in order to provide liquidity for the token. And this incentive will come in the form of LP tokens, which is made up 50% of SWAN and 50% of USDC from the Blackswan fund. So you will be indirectly receiving rewards in USDC, as you can claim those LP tokens directly for USDC, and you can also claim them for additional SWAN. So the APY, the theoretical APY, because this will only last for a short period, during the period of low liquidity, you will only be receiving these high rewards for around 20 days. However, more specific details will be in the white paper, which you can check down in the description down below. However, during this period, the APY theoretically will be very, very high, and all of the USDC from the Blackswan fund will be distributed within this 20-day period. So you can think, let's say that the supply has been expanding for 90 days, and then there's a collapse in the market, there's uncertainty, SWAN becomes less liquid, there's low liquidity, the LP token rewards can be extremely high, as that 90-day accumulation of USDC stablecoin and SWAN token will then be distributed in a very aggressive manner. Next, the liquidity providers benefit the price action, as when there is low liquidity, there is high LP rewards, and there is increased demand for SWAN. So how does this work? Well, basically, when there's low liquidity in the market, which is another word for uncertainty, because if there's uncertainty in the market, then less people will be willing to provide liquidity for the token and risk their stablecoin, then there will be high LP rewards. And whenever there are high LP rewards, partially paid in stablecoin, regardless of what's happening to the SWAN price, people will still want to stake SWAN in order to gain access to those LP rewards. So the demand for the SWAN token will increase. So basically the idea here is that during a period of low liquidity, then this will cause a spike in the price of Blackswan as everyone starts buying in order to try to get access to the high LP rewards coming from the Blackswan fund in the Blackswan Lake, which is basically the staking pool where you can receive those rewards. The price action benefits the investors because you get a couple of key features that are not available in other tokens. Number one, the Blackswan token is completely decorrelated from the rest of the market because if there's uncertainty, Blackswan is going up, and if there's relative stability, it can be going sideways, it can be going up. It has completely unique price action compared to everything else, especially since it is traded on DEXs with a stablecoin. So you're not taking risk on the other side of your position. A majority of other tokens benefit liquidity pools with coins that are tied to other risky assets. So sometimes there will be a token like ETH to whatever other token pair they decide. And although you're taking risk with this altcoin that you're holding, you're also taking risk with this Ethereum. So if Ethereum goes down, then it's more likely that you are going to exit this liquidity position, even though the altcoin itself is not going down. So with the stablecoin liquidity pool, you're only taking risk on one side of the investment, and that is with the Blackswan token. Next, there is minimal downside risk, as I mentioned before, because you have that built-in stop loss from the Blackswan fund holding those stablecoins. Even if something bad happens to the Blackswan ecosystem, you can still stake those SWAN, and if there's very low liquidity, you will then receive all of the stablecoins from the Blackswan fund, and hopefully at least recover a majority of your investment or whatever percentage of the investment that the Blackswan fund is able to distribute to you. And of course, there are the predictable smart contract functions. So investors can try to anticipate certain smart contract functions. So let's say that there is low liquidity in Blackswan. Before those aggressive rewards start coming out, people may start already increasing the price in anticipation of those functions. As since it is a smart contract, everyone knows what's going to happen in the ecosystem, and people can try to anticipate it how they see fit. And finally, it is an anti-fragile asset, as I mentioned before, because when it is the least liquid, when there's the most uncertainty, then that is when it is the most valuable. Liquidity providers benefit the investors because there is dependable market liquidity and there is utility for the token. The liquidity providers are what is providing utility, as they are the ones who are going to be increasing the demand for the token whenever you're getting those extreme rewards. And of course, they're also providing that dependable liquidity that is the whole basis upon which Blackswan is built on. You can trade it as much as you like during periods of uncertainty, during periods of stability, etc. There will always be a high percentage of the supply being provided as liquidity, or at least that is the goal of the token. So as I just showed, each and every one of these key members in the Blackswan ecosystem all benefit each other in order to create a token that is anti-fragile and has minimal downside risk and provides extreme utility to the entire community overall. If you would like to learn more about Blackswan, you can feel free to head over to our website, blackswan.network, join our Telegram group down in the description down below, or read our white paper, which is a work in progress, which I'll also leave down in the description down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next one.